The recent fixture that happened at Stamford Bridge actually showcased Chelsea playing one of the best Enzo Maresca football. The scoreline does not support this statement, but when you look at the clips, when you look at the overall match and how Chelsea looked to control and dominate the game, you can see that Chelsea actually dominated Inter Milan from minute 1 to minute 90. Considering that looking at this tactical structure, you can see this is a huge tactical change that Enzo Maresca made at Chelsea. The question is, how did Enzo Maresca actually manage to pull up this tactical structure that is somehow different from his usual norm of tactics? Today, we are going to try and analyze Chelsea versus Inter Milan match that actually happened yesterday. We are going to break down how Chelsea looked to attack Inter Milan. We are going to look at the structure that Chelsea employed, and we are going to see how Chelsea managed to dominate Inter Milan both in and out of possession. This is going to actually be solidified by facts and stats that were actually captured in the game. Now, when you look at the stats, you can see that Chelsea actually managed to dominate Inter when it comes to dominating the ball and being in possession. The number of shots they had, both shots on target and shots off target, the number of chances they created, and also how they managed to limit Inter from actually creating credible chances that could actually see Chelsea conceding some goals. And that is what we are going to look into today. Do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more videos like this. We start by looking at how Chelsea looked to play when they had the ball in possession. What were the key tactical tweaks and changes that Enzo Maresca actually put into this Chelsea team? Now, Chelsea usually under Maresca want to build from the back. That is by the goalkeeper looking to try and find the two center backs with the ball. Now, Chelsea expects teams to actually press them aggressively high. However, this was not the case for Inter, as Inter chose to sit in a mid block and allow Chelsea to actually progress from their first phase of build-up and try to penetrate them and try to hit them, create an overload against them in midfield by sitting in somehow like a 3-5-2 structure. Now, Chelsea continued with their usual tactic of having their wingers start high and wide, having their front three actually playing high and wide and far away from each other. Why? Because Chelsea are able to push their two attacking midfielders or center midfielders in those half space regions to actually play close to the number 9. And because this will leave their defensive midfielder by himself, they actually look to invert a fullback in the team. But did Chelsea do that in this game? No and yes, because they actually inverted their fullbacks in quite a unique fashion, something that I'm really pleased with Enzo Maresca. First of all, Cucurella did not invert in midfield to play alongside Lavia, as many people think, but actually inverted into the backline, but was somehow looking to make periodic inversions. Chelsea also did not form the usual box-shaped midfield that Enzo Maresca wants to form with his team, with Enzo Maresca making a very brilliant tactical change in this game. Now, because Chelsea were looking to play the ball to the wide centre backs, the work of the wing backs was actually to limit the wide centre backs from progressing with the ball. And because of this problem, we started to see Chelsea actually making a change in shift. And even when Chelsea looked to try and play the ball towards the holding midfielders, Inter would try to use their midfielders to try and intercept. And because Inter created this 5-man overload by dropping their 2 players to sit onto Chelsea pivot, we saw Enzo Maresca make a tactical shift, and this is reverting into what we call a diamond kind of midfield by pushing Malo Gusto to occupy the right half space and actually having Dewsbury Hall playing in behind McGuire. Chelsea managed to create a sort of inverted box-shaped midfield. This is a very brilliant tactical change that Maresca did. Now, Lavia was the only single pivot in this game, but he had 3 options. Now, Inter's midfield had to choose whether they are going to pick the 3 players behind them or they are going to stop Lavia. You can even see from this clip, Chelsea's 3 centre-back, Lavia is playing as the single holding midfielder. Look at the position of Gusto, Dewsbury Hall and Enzo Fernandez. They are actually creating that line of 3 ahead. Now this line of 3 ahead actually created problems for Inter because their midfield 3 was automatically outnumbered. If they chose to sit off and cover the 3 midfielders, then Romeo Lavia will be free to receive the ball directly from the 3 centre-backs. And this is because the centre-backs were able to play those penetrative passes behind the 2 pivots. Now, because Lavia was playing alone, it was counterproductive for using the 2 pivots to cover them because it will leave the 2 pivots in a problematic situation, wondering how they should actually cover. And because this left them in very difficult situation, Chelsea will use third man pass combination by playing the ball to the players in the half spaces and actually looking to find Lavia with a second ball. And you can see even from this clip how Chelsea were doing it. Again, look at that close, narrow back 3 that Chelsea have. And this back 3 are holding on to the ball until Inter's players are able to press them. Look at the position of Lavia. Lavia in this position receives the ball through second pass kind of combinations. Now, because Chelsea were able to have that numerical advantage in build-up by having the 3 centre-backs against the 2 players in midfield and Romeo Lavia also dropping in so that Chelsea could form 2 twin diamonds. And because of this situation, Chelsea would actually shift the ball onto their wide centre-backs who will look to hit the ball through the channels. Why were they hitting the ball through the channels? It's because Inter will try to push their wing backs to try and cover these players. And this actually created joy for the likes of Noni Madueke and Mykhailo Mudryk, and especially Mudryk. Mudryk will be found time and time again by Marc Cucurella. In this case, you can see Cucurella has received the ball and is actually playing that ball for Mudryk, who's making that run in that channel area. And that is something that Chelsea looked to try and do in the first half, actually splitting Inter's back 3 and actually disorienting Inter's backline, but they did not manage to actually capitalize on their chances. Again, you can see from this clip, Fofana has the ball. You can see the position of Gusto is actually pulling a wing back inside, and now Noni Madueke is free. And because Fofana spots this, he's able to play that ball over the top and actually position Noni Madueke in a situation whereby Noni Madueke can be 1v1 against the wide fullback on the other flank, something that Chelsea actually attempted to do throughout the game. Now, this same thing was replicated down the left with crossfield passes to Mykhailo Mudryk, who was also not quite great in his final product. But it's something that Chelsea were looking to do time and time in the game. Even when Raheem Sterling came on, Chelsea were looking to have those balls played into those channel areas. Now, the benefit of having this ball played in the channel areas is that you're able to get your most creative and dynamic wingers to actually attack those spaces and create problems for the opponent. Now, we move on to something that Inter had to adapt. So Inter had to change their style in order to adapt to Chelsea's balls in behind. And this is by dropping their wingbacks to actually form a back 5, by using their wingbacks to cover Chelsea's wide players. And Inter decided to sit into a 5-3-2. Now, this 5-3-2 actually even took away their attacking threat, because now their wingbacks were playing deep to try and cover Chelsea's wingers, and their 3 centre-backs were tasked to actually step out and try to pick these players in those pivot positions. But did they actually manage to do this? No, because one thing we noticed is that now Chelsea's wide centre-backs were free to cover the ball, especially down the left. Marc Cucurella was quite adventurous, and sometimes fans mistook this by saying Cucurella was inverting. No, Cucurella was actually just progressing with the ball because he actually saw space, and he looked to try and link up with Enzo Fernandez in that midfield position to actually try to find himself in areas where he could cross, as you can see in this clip. Now, the position of Marc Cucurella in this clip further showcases how he was quite free throughout the game. You can see how he looks to actually approach and find himself in situations whereby he's actually ready to actually create for Chelsea. And this is because the wingbacks dropping deep actually allowed him to be much more free and actually play like a traditional conventional fullback. Now, they decided to use the three midfielders to try and prevent Cucurella from moving forward. But this actually also opened another can of worms, because now Enzo Fernandez will actually shift wide from that inside midfield position, and Dewsbury Hall will move to occupy that left half space position. And now Enzo will actually look to try and create that overload down the left together with Marc Cucurella. And because Marc Cucurella together with Enzo were actually looking to create that triton together with Modric, they were able to create problems, and this actually made Inter and Inzaghi actually change the manner in which Inter looked to play in this game. How did Inter do this? Now, because Enzo was in that position, and now he was able to make those passes in those channels for either Modric or Dewsbury Hall, Inter now realized that they had to actually shift the entire backline towards Chelsea's left and try to limit this danger that was being created by that overload. But here again, this we saw another weapon that Enzo Maresca had, and this is pushing Gusto into the right half space and having Enzo Fernandez make those crossfield passes to Noni Madueke. And that's why time and time again in the first half, you saw Noni Madueke receiving the ball in acres of space, and you saw Enzo Fernandez making that in swing across towards the right, because he knew that because of the position of Gusto, Noni Madueke will receive the ball, and when Noni Madueke received the ball, he will look to dribble towards the byline and actually look to make a cutback or a cross. Again, Chelsea were quite wasteful in trying to actually score goals in these kinds of situations. That's why I'm telling you that Chelsea's attack that day was quite off. Now, Lavia in this position was much more deadly, because now in this position he will be able to actually draw in players and look to play with this triton midfield. And this is something that I really like about Enzo Maresca. He decided to shift Chelsea's attacking lineup from the usual box-shaped midfield into something much more dynamic. By having these three players high up, he actually came up with a solution on how he will actually be breaking down teams that decide to play with a back five. Remember, a lot of people were asking how will Chelsea break down teams that are actually building with a back five, and that is what they did. And Chelsea was so aggressive in this situation because they had numerical advantages in the back and in midfield. They were easily able to counter press and win the ball. Whenever Lavia looked to play with the ball and sometimes lose the ball, Chelsea were quite aggressive in how they counter-pressed and how they won the ball. This is because the spaces between the players and the opponent in possession were quite short. As you can see from this clip, how Chelsea were quite aggressive and how they were very close to actually close down the ball and limit Inter's counter-attacking moves. Now, the reason why it is very important to have positional play structures and having control is also learning how to control transitions, because you will not have the ball from minute 1 to minute 90. Therefore, you need to have a clear plan on how you're going to transition from in possession to out of possession phase. And Chelsea knew that because their structure allowed them to be close to the ball and close to the opponent once he received the ball. So how did Chelsea actually look to play out of possession? What was the tactic for Chelsea when they lost the ball? Now, Inter will look to build from the back by having their wingers start out high and wide in this instant and their midfield dropping slightly deeper. Now, Chelsea employed what we call a man-to-man to zonal approach kind of press. I've done a video on that and I want you to really check, with Chelsea looking to deny Inter Milan any space in the middle of the park. Now, Chelsea will start out quite narrow, but employ what we call a man-to-man stroke zonal pressing strategy. And I'm going to show you how Chelsea actually did this. Now, when you look at this clip, you can see that Chelsea are actually pressing aggressively, but they're denying Inter any space in midfield. Any Inter player who's dropping into midfield is actually being tracked by Chelsea. But at the same time, Chelsea are maintaining the zonal approach because they are pressing man-to-man as a team. They're actually looking to cut out any passing channels in midfield, that is zonal marking, and also employing a man marking system. And because of this strategy, Chelsea were able to stifle Inter throughout the game and actually dominated possession because they were able to deny Inter any play from the back. This is a huge improvement from Chelsea's overall defending structure. As we realized in the preseason games, Chelsea's pressing structure was not quite the best, but in this game it force. Now, Chelsea will use their forward to actually limit Inter to play the ball towards the wide area. Now, once the ball will be shackled towards the wide area, Chelsea will look to close all the passing infield passing channels and have the player in possession actually have the ball towards the touchline. And because Inter were afraid to actually play through their centre backs, they wanted to use their goalkeeper to actually look to play the balls quick fast to the wing backs. Now, the problem is Chelsea fullbacks were ready and aggressive enough to step out from their line and actually look to cover these wingbacks. This is because they had solid faith in their midfield was actually denying any central progression. Now you can see from this clip here, Chelsea are pressing with two players, with the wingers coming in short, having another line of three players, and their defense line moving high up to actually deny Inter any space and time on the ball. When you decide to press aggressively high, then you need to ensure that the front line is very aggressive so that you are able to have the backline push forward, and in that when the opponent decides to go long, the backline is able to win that ball and actually limit the kind of threat that the opposition is looking to create. This is something that I've really been asking of Chelsea. If you want to press aggressively high, then you need to ensure that the forward players are quite aggressive, and I'm very privileged to see how Mark Guehi actually managed to increase the intensity of his press. This can be attributed with also Chelsea playing from home. Cole Palmer also played well in this press, and I also saw Christopher Nkunku coming in and actually fortifying his position in actually helping to press. When Chelsea were in deeper phases of possession, we saw them moving into a 4-4-2 defensive structure, and they were actually playing well, but there were some slight problems. Chelsea had problems with how their lines were. Remember, in the previous video where I've done zonal and man-marking approach, I've talked about when you look at when the ball is in a playable position and when the ball is not in a playable position. And sometimes Chelsea defenders and backline mistook this. When sometimes the player was in a playable position, they did not drop that line, and we saw Inter trying to attempt those balls over the top, like in this instant. But in some instances, Chelsea were actually doing the right thing. When the ball was playable in a position, you would see them, the backline dropping deep. When the opponent would look back, the backline would push up. But it is something that Chelsea really need to improve. And you can even see from the goal they conceded that it was actually a slight mistake to how they're actually supposed to arrange that backline. In that instant, the backline did not read the situation well. They dropped deep when the team were aggressively pressing. And these are something that the team will actually learn as the season progresses. So that is my analysis on Chelsea versus Inter, and I'm looking to do a video on my Premier League predictions. Thanks for watching, and see you again.